Hi there, it's Vicky. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about my debt story. I guess debt really wasn't part of my story growing up. And the reason I say that is that we grew up really poor, but when you grow up really poor, you know how much you have, right? And um, we lived on a one income family. My dad was the only one that worked. And I remember being a little kid and hearing my parents talk about how my dad made like $17,000 a year. And there was three of us at the time. There's four children now. My mom was a stay-at-home mom and really budgeted. And I was just recalling recently that she really did the envelope system before this whole Dave Ramsey thing. Maybe it was because that's how she grew up and what she saw with her folks. My grandparents, my maternal grandparents, worked in fields as farm workers. They were migrant workers that came over here from Mexico, and I talked a little bit previously about how I'm first generation American. And my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, worked as a construction worker after being a farm worker. So what he would do is he would do his construction work job, and then my grandma didn't drive, and so he would go pick her up. And sometimes they would even do things together, and like maybe he'd do a second shift and go and pick strawberries or tomatoes or whatever. My mom tells me that she recalls in the summertime how they picked produce as kids and earned money in the summertime as little kids, and as a result she hates tomatoes. My mom would say that my grandma would always set aside a little bit of money because come winter time you can't work in those type of environments, so you really have to squirrel away and save as much as you can for those times where there is no work, whether it's construction or farm working. And so that's kind of how she grew up and how we grew up. And I recall every Friday when I was a kid, the banks would close early. I want to say they would close at 3, if I recalled correctly. But my dad would come home for lunch, give my mom his check, he'd sign it over to her, and at some point we would go to the bank and cash it. I don't even recall her ever using the actual bank to keep money in, but again, I was little, so who knows, maybe she did. She'd get all the cash, and I remember I would think it was like Monopoly money, and I would ask if I could count it. So I would sit there and count and put all the denominations together. And then she would stuff her envelopes, and she knew what to budget for gas and electricity, what to budget for groceries and things like that. And I'm assuming if there was no more money in the envelope, then she wasn't able to spend. She really wasn't she still really isn't a spender to this day because of it. Anyway, so that's how I grew up. And I think because of that, when I grew up and got to be an adult, I felt that I didn't have anything when I was a kid. And so I wanted to get my own money and to be able to buy whatever I wanted, because it was always, we can't do whatever because we don't have money. So I wasn't allowed to play in sports. I wasn't allowed to really participate in anything because the standard answer was always, well, we don't have money for that. And in my head, I just had this reoccurring, story in my head thinking, well, when I am able to make money, I'm going to do whatever I want, and no one's going to tell me I can't do it. So I traveled and I spent money on just stupid stuff. And I always thought, well, I'm spending money on experiences. But really, well, yes, those experiences make up who I am today. I also think, gosh, boy, did I blow a lot of money. Anyway, that's another. In high school, I got a job. And my first job was McDonald's. And I worked at a hot dog place here in the Bay Area. And then I started going into retail and so on and so forth. And I remember, because my dad always said, well, we can't do whatever because we don't have money. My brothers were not in sports. And I remember one of my brothers really wanted to be in wrestling, and wrestling costs a lot of money with tournaments and uniforms and stuff. I helped pay for his wrestling. And it was awesome. I felt very proud to be able to do that. And the fact that my dad couldn't tell him he couldn't, because the only reason he was saying that was because we didn't have money. So that was a very proud moment for me as a kid, and I remember that specifically. I also remember that, because we were so poor, we only got like 2 pairs of pants, and we had to alternate them, and like a few shirts. And so by the time I was 16, I was able to buy my own school clothes, and that was really exciting. I was also able to buy my yearbook and my Letterman's jacket and all the things that in senior year I never thought I was going to be able to do because we just didn't have the money, and my parents had, extra mouths to feed. And in all that time, I got another little brother came into the picture. He is 12 years younger than me. So yeah, there was just a lot. And my mom had to finally go back to work once the little one was born. So that changed the whole dynamic as well. So being first generation, and really I was the first grandchild on both sides of my family, no one told me to go to college. So in high school, no one ever said, oh, Vicky, you really should take college prep courses, or you should, look into seeing where you want to go to college. I think for my family overall in general, they just wanted me to graduate high school. I think a high school diploma was huge for them. And I think that in those times, women got married young and started a family, and they just assumed that I would get married and have kids and do that. And I really just didn't see that for myself. My mom was a stay-at-home mom for those, 12, 13 years. And I saw her to be, she might not agree with me, but she looked depressed. She did not look like she was having a good time. I think we drove her insane. It just didn't paint a pretty picture. She was exhausted. I'm a mom now, so I get it. So I say all that because I worked. And when it came down to me going to college, I had no plan. So I didn't have good grades. I was in general classes. I wasn't in college prep classes. And yeah, that's really what it boiled down to. I had a friend of mine who was going to junior college locally. So I was like, yeah, I'll go there. I didn't even know why I was going there. I just knew, sure, that sounded cool. So it sounded like a extension of high school. I didn't even go right away. I skipped a semester. So once I did that, I was there 2 years. I had met this girlfriend, I don't even remember how, probably through a party or mutual friends, whatever. And she was telling me she was going to paralegal school across the bay at a different school. And I went with her one day, and the campus was gorgeous. It was not like this ghetto place that I was going to. And I was like, hey, I want to do this. I could totally do this. And her classes sounded really interesting. So anyway, after 2 years of junior college, I went there. So then I was still working. I actually had like 2 part-time jobs. I'm in paralegal school, and I got a part-time job at a law firm, and I was just seeing all the work that the paralegals were doing, and I'm like, wow, they're doing a lot of work, but the attorney is the one that actually signs the documents. So it just kind of popped in my head like, yeah, I don't want to be a paralegal. I want to be an attorney. And I didn't even know what that entailed. So I kind of, I asked, and then I realized, oh, I have to go to college. Am I smart enough to go to college? And I really felt that way. I didn't think I was a smart girl, even though I had accomplished a lot in my 20 years. I moved to LA. I applied to a bunch of schools. I decided on Cal State Northridge. I lived with an aunt the first year. She let me live there rent-free, which was really sweet and nice. And I'll forever be grateful to her. I met this girl in a class. I wasn't going to work that first year, but then I got a job on campus at the computer lab. And so then I met this girl through one of my classes, and she told me that she was going to do a sorority rush, and I had no idea what even a sorority was. You have to understand, I'm Hispanic. My family was migrant workers. We only spoke Spanish at home. I didn't hang out with anyone. I was the oldest of all of my family. All of my siblings and cousins were little, and I just didn't have those type of friends that were in college and sorority. I had no idea. So I just kind of went along with her. got sucked in, but it really was the best choice for me. Some of my best friends I met through college, through sorority. So shout out to the Kappa Kappa Gammas. And so yeah, that was an expense that was kind of dumb because I didn't have the money for that either. But anyway, so then I had to get a job. And I got a job at a law firm through somebody that I met at school who said they needed a file clerk. And I wound up working there for 7 years. I did everything. I filed, I was a secretary, I did paralegal work. I like moved my way up in this little law firm. And I stayed there while I went to undergrad and then law school. And in law school, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to go full time during the day. I had to pay rent. At this point, I had moved out from my aunts. I had an apartment. It was really minimal, but a lot of fun. And that was the first time I had ever lived with non-family. And I had this roommate. She's the only person I've lived with. I lived with her for 3 years, my best friend Dana. And other than family, I've never lived with anyone other than her. So I don't even have a sister. So that was the first time I've ever like actually cohabitated with a female. And like I said, I couldn't go to law school during the day, so I had to find programs that were at night. So I worked full-time during the day, went to law school at night, and law school at night is 4 years. It was so hard. But the people in my class in law school were all in their second or third careers. They were married and had kids. And here I am, this young person. I think I was like 26, 25 at the time. 24. I think I was 24 because I ended law school at 28. So yeah, so I was in a little later, but I was still young. Like I wasn't married and I had no kids. And here are these people busting, like they were doing really well and in class, and they had all these other responsibilities that I didn't have. And so it just pushed me to try harder and be better. And I graduated law school, and I was just amazed at myself. I never ever would have thought that little girl who was busting her ass in McDonald's at 16 would have a law degree. I remember being so proud. And in my BA, for my BA degree, I did not walk. Because I was like, yeah, whatever. I don't even know a whole lot of people here in LA. My parents are in Northern California. They're not going to come. They can't afford to come with their, tribe of kids. So I just didn't walk. I'm like, usually you walk the stage for other people and not for yourself. And I just didn't feel like I needed to walk across the stage to know that I graduated from college. But for my law degree, it was definitely different. It was so overwhelming, and I was just so proud of myself, and I still really am. Even though I don't use my degree, I'm not a lawyer. So anyway, I still use it every day. I feel like I'm constantly negotiating, and I can have very intelligent conversations, and that says a whole lot. I feel like that is amazing. This video is way over time. I really want to keep videos under 10 minutes, really under like 6 or 7 minutes, because sometimes once people go rambling, like you just stop listening unless it's interesting. So if you've stuck this long, I'm hoping you find me interesting. Anyway, I digress. Lastly, the reason I brought all of this up and kind of letting you know how I've gotten here is that in school, I had to take out student loans. And I was that girl that took out the max, and I justified it by saying I needed living expenses and I needed to do this or that. And I would work really, really hard and save and save and save and then go on a trip and do something really fun. And as a result, I ended law school with $120,000 in student loan debt. Just student loan debt. Thank you so much for listening. And if you have any questions, please feel free to leave it down below. And on my next one, I think we'll get into just some fun stuff.